It began with a phone call no one expected. An ordinary name whispered in connection to an extraordinary crime. Mindi Kassotis. On the surface, she was just another young woman living a quiet life. But her murder would reveal layers of strangeness that investigators couldn't explain. Timelines that didn't add up. People who knew too much, and secrets that refused to stay buried. This is not just another case file. This is one of the strangest murders you've never heard of. Don't miss out on the next chilling mystery. Hit subscribe and tap the bell icon so you're the first to know when new stories drop. Mindi Kassotis lived what many would call an ordinary life. A small town, familiar faces, and a quiet routine that rarely made headlines. Friends described her as gentle, thoughtful, and almost invisible in the background of daily life. But sometimes, the quietest lives hide the deepest fractures. Her house sat at the edge of town, surrounded by tall trees that seemed to swallow the sunlight before it reached her windows. To outsiders, it was peaceful. To those closer, there were whispers, arguments that broke the silence at night, people coming and going at odd hours, and sudden changes in her behavior that no one could explain. Investigators would later piece together fragments of her final days, but the puzzle never quite fit. She seemed anxious, as if carrying a secret too heavy to share. She stopped attending gatherings, made unusual purchases, and her once steady job performance began to slip. Yet no one intervened. What made it stranger was the people around her. Friends who knew too much, but claimed to know nothing. A neighbor who insisted he saw lights flickering at midnight, and family members whose stories of her last movements contradicted each other. This was the beginning of a case that defied logic. The ordinary mask of Mindi's life was slipping, and underneath, something much darker was waiting to be revealed. When investigators stepped inside Mindi Kassotis' home, nothing felt right. It wasn't just a crime scene, it was a puzzle. Furniture slightly out of place, drawers half open, lights left on in rooms she never used. It felt staged, but staged by someone who knew her well. Neighbors recalled hearing nothing unusual the night she died. No screams, no break-ins, nothing to suggest violence. Yet inside, subtle details unsettled detectives. A half-drunk glass of water on the table. A phone left on the counter, as if it had been set down mid-conversation, and doors locked from the inside. The strangest part? There were no clear signs of forced entry. Whoever had been in that house, if anyone at all, had likely been someone Mindi trusted. Then came the inconsistencies. Her bank records revealed late-night withdrawals she never explained. Receipts were found for supplies she didn't seem to use, and coworkers admitted she'd spoken about leaving town, but never said why. The people closest to her only made things murkier. One friend swore she'd been with Mindi the day before her death, but couldn't produce a single detail about where they'd gone. A family member insisted Mindi called them hours before her disappearance, yet phone records showed no such call. And then there was the neighbor. He told police he'd seen a shadowy figure leaving Mindi's house at 2 a.m. A tall man, wearing a hood, moving quickly into the woods behind the property. But when pressed, his story shifted. Sometimes the man was tall, sometimes shorter, sometimes walking, sometimes running. Investigators were left chasing fragments of truth in a sea of contradictions. Each clue opened another door, but behind every door was another question. Was Mindi planning to disappear, or was she silenced before she could? Were those closest to her protecting her, or protecting themselves? And as police retraced her final steps, one chilling realization began to surface. The story of Mindi Kassotis was never just about how she died. It was about what she knew and who might have wanted to keep it hidden. For weeks, investigators circled the same contradictions, chasing shadows and half-truths. But the break came from something so small, it almost slipped past unnoticed. A single surveillance tape, pulled from a store just blocks away from Mindi's home. On the grainy footage, Mindi was not alone. She appeared days before her death, walking with a man in his 30s, someone investigators hadn't connected to her before. He wasn't family, he wasn't a known friend, but he was familiar to law enforcement. The man was a former coworker, quietly dismissed months earlier after a series of disputes that never made it into official reports. He had motive, he had access, and suddenly his name surfaced in Mindi's bank withdrawals and on her phone records. The narrative shifted violently. Mindi wasn't just anxious about something vague. She had been meeting him, hiding it from her family, keeping secrets no one could quite piece together. When detectives finally brought him in, his calmness was almost chilling. He admitted nothing. But the evidence, timelines, receipts, phone calls, tightened around him. What investigators realized was that Mindi had likely discovered something about him, something dangerous enough to silence her forever. The betrayal cut deepest because she had trusted him. The man she once confided in may have been the very person who destroyed her. The question that lingered wasn't just who killed Mindi Kassotis, but what truth did she stumble upon that made her life worth ending? Years have passed since the murder of Mindi Kassotis, yet the echoes of her story refuse to fade. The man once believed to be her confidant now sits behind prison walls, convicted not only by the evidence, but by the web of secrets surrounding him. His calmness has never wavered, and to this day, he maintains his innocence. For Mindi's family, closure never came. A grave marker on the edge of town stands as a reminder, but questions hang heavier than flowers placed at her resting place. Did they ever truly know what happened to her, or why? The house where it all began sits abandoned now, its windows boarded, its silence more unsettling than the night of her death. Neighbors pass by without looking, as if avoiding the weight of its history. Investigators who worked the case still speak of it in interviews. Some insist justice was served. Others admit the evidence left too many gaps, that the story had cracks no verdict could seal. And so, the memory of Mindi Kassotis lingers, not just as a victim of a violent crime, but as a woman caught in something larger, something darker, that may never be fully understood. The present offers no final answer, only the chilling reminder that truth is often messier than justice. The case of Mindi Kassotis stands as a reminder that even the most ordinary lives can conceal extraordinary darkness. What began as whispers in a quiet town ended with a story that still feels unfinished. A man sits in prison, but the unease surrounding his conviction lingers like a shadow. Was he truly the one responsible, or just the most convenient answer? For her family, justice feels like an illusion. The grave marker bears her name, but not the full truth. They live with silence where answers should be, forced to reconcile with a past that refuses to close. And for the rest of us, the story of Mindi Kassotis is not just about crime. It is about the fragility of trust, the weight of secrets, and the haunting possibility that the truth may never be known. As the years pass, the mystery only deepens. The boarded windows of her home, the conflicting testimonies, the unshakable contradictions, they all point to a story that resists clarity. Which leaves us with a chilling question. How many other lives end with half-truths, buried evidence, and unresolved endings that slip quietly into history? With that said, Thanks for watching, and until next time.